this generation and the generation after and the generation before kind of grew up in this. I want you to kind of help pop the bubble here on the don't offend me generation. I'm so offended. Everything that you say is offensive. And you did a couple sermons on this.
Yeah.
And even when you say it, you can hear everybody in the crowd like, yeah, preach it, pastor. Because who's going to talk about it? We want butts in the seats. We don't want to hit anything controversial nowadays.
Yeah.
And I say that respectfully. I don't mean to be mean about that. But can you talk and address on this, like the offense and why that's happening and what we could do our best to correct it?
Listen to me. If something is said to you, it is either truth or it's a lie.
Come on.
And if it's truth, it benefits you and you accept it. And if it's a lie, why are you accepting it?
Straight up.
So I don't get offended. If you tell me something that's true about me, I have to accept that's true. He's calling it out in me. It's real. I can act offended, but I know it's truth. So I shouldn't be offended. I should take that as a truth. But if you're speaking something over me that's a lie, this is your issue, buddy. You're lying. I'm not receiving it. I'm not going to accept it. So I have no reason to be offended by it because it's not true about me. That's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
It's a simplistic answer to offense. Listen, you're either speaking the truth to me or you're speaking a lie to me. And if it's the truth, I need to accept it. I need to deal with it. If it's not the truth, why am I being offended? It's not true.
That's right.
It's not the truth, so I don't have to be offended by it because it's not an accurate statement. It's not a truth statement. So it really doesn't apply. You may think it, but I'm not offended because I know it's not truth.
Right. And I kind of want to hit it this way, too. I think because of how they're taught, it's almost like, and this is a little bit deeper than how I'm going to go, but I think a lot of these young people have never had real love. And so they want acceptance in other things. And we had talked about this before. I think that's why a lot of these young people, because they're not at home seeking the Lord, they're not in the Word, they'll want to go out to church to try to figure out a word from the Lord or something like that because it's kind of a hot movement, the prophecy stuff and all those things. I think, too, in college campuses, because it's prevalent on college campuses and some high schools now, that the offense thing, it's all about offending me and I can't be offended. But do you think it's because... I'm gonna say it bluntly. Maybe you can disseminate what I'm trying to say. Because they've been so spoiled to believe that life has no trial when Christ promised us trials and tribulations. Yeah. Be of good cheer, though I overcame it. Right? I read this quote today. It said something about if you take compliments to your head, you'll take. You won't take criticism to the heart or something like that. It's basically, it's all about you and selfishness. When people around me, and I consider you a mentor and a leader in my life, and you're teaching me how to do this pastor stuff as you're learning, right? I'm learning it too. But there's been times you sat me down and said, bro, let's just get this straight. You know what I mean? And I receive it that way. I think I just naturally receive it. But in this generation of people, it's almost like they've been taught life's just easy peasy. Don't worry about it. And we got to shelter them and we have to do all these things. They hit the real world and they want this acceptance that they didn't get. I don't know what it is. I can't explain it.
I think it's maybe twofold. And I think that the first half of the puzzle is in our society today, there is notoriety and attention for being a victim.
Bingo.
Okay. So if I can tell you my hard luck story, then you will say, wow, you've been through a lot. And I've received a salve. I got an attention. I got something drawn to me. So people will make their stories worse than they really were when they occurred, such that it gives them the opportunity to have somebody say, wow, you've had it rougher than me. So in all of the Sue Happy Society and all of that kind of thing, there is a glory in suffering made from my case is worse than yours, and I think that's just sad. On the other half, and this is a generational thing, there truly was a generational gap, and I'm going to say it was probably in the 80s for the most part, when the whole mentality of self-esteem came out. Mm-hmm. that the generations of our fathers and our grandfathers who became strong because they were beat down, but they survived and they recognized who they are and they went forward, that changed to make sure and not do anything that would hurt them or make them feel bad about themselves. Make sure and always build them up. And my first wife was a school teacher, and she used to always tell it this way: I'm so sick of mothers who their fifth grader gets out of the car and shuts the door, and they yell out, "Oh, you shut that door so well." It's like, really? You need to be complimented for shutting a door? Like so you're going to be offended if somebody doesn't tell you you're a good door shutter. No, I'm saying she used it as an example.
I was going to say, man, dang. All right, we're getting a little far.
But what I'm saying is, because of this self-esteem thing, I always had to build you up. Well, the problem is life doesn't always build you up.
No, man.
And the truth is, when I got kicked, I learned a whole lot.
Dang right.
And when I lost the game, I didn't get a trophy. And it made me want to work harder to win a game so I could see what it feels like to get a trophy. So, we raised this generation of, I'm so worried about your feelings that I won't ever tell you the truth because it might hurt you. So now the truth offends you and the lie offends you because being a victim gives me a story.
That's exactly right.
And we've done away with the truth of love. So now love is comforting somebody and like you said, feelings, right? The attachment of feelings, because there was a whole psychology movement in the 80s that really pushed this build self-esteem. Then your kid will become more confident. They'll be able to handle the world better, which actually got it completely opposite, because you learn your confidence and self-esteem through your trials when you come out on the other side. And so this whole movement pushed this, and I feel like love got twisted and perverted into something where it's all about the good feeling. So if I tell you the truth and the truth hurts, suddenly I'm not loving you anymore. I'm hurting you.
You see this mostly recently. Let's bring it from the 80s into the current. Let's say the last 5 years. The last 5 years, this has played out this way. Don't judge me. It's not right for you to judge me. And I'm saying, I'm not judging you. I'm giving you a fact about you and its truth. And you can either accept it and become better, or I'm lying about you, in which case you shouldn't be accepting it and just move on. But the don't judge me movement is really the next step from the build your self-esteem by telling you you're doing everything great and you're doing everything wonderful. Now when you tell me I'm not doing wonderful, it's because you're judging me. It's a trap. It's a trap.
It's kind of like, and I'm reading Romans 5, and I was going to go to James and all that stuff, but just listen to this. Even Paul, he said in Romans 5, he said, not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings. They rejoiced in the suffering. And I preached on this before, but you rejoice in the suffering, knowing that suffering produces endurance. And that's like flat out contrary to like the psychology of today. The suffering produces endurance. Endurance produces character. That's what he's after. The character of a man, the character of a Christian. It's not just you professing Christ. He's literally building in you how to prove your own ministry. And ministry doesn't mean I wear the robe and the cloth and I have a little plaque on my desk and all these things. And then he says this: knowing suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Hope does not put us to shame. And it's almost like if you keep putting into these young people, and I say young people, that love doesn't offend. Love doesn't tell the truth. And it's funny because in 1 John 3:18, it says that. Let us not love in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth, right? First deeds, though. Make sure you show them you love them before you tell them you love them, right? And it says this: because the love that's been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, it's been given to us, right? And it's a little different than how I usually read it, but basically it's that. When Paul gloried, he gloried in his trials. He didn't glory in the fact that he was a good guy, God saved him, and he keeps puffing me up with words. It was, I glory in this because I see the suffering, but I also see, and he used to say this to the other disciples, he would say, it's because in my bounds you abounded. Through his suffering, they abounded as a church. The more they were persecuted, the church abounded. That's a whole other tangent, but.
I think I look at that progression that he shows, and the bottom line is, if I go through a trial And I consider it joy that I'm going to go through this suffering because it's going to create in me a perseverance, and that perseverance is going to create in me a hope, a character. What I'm really saying is tonight on your way home, you total your car. It's a terrible thing. You're thinking financially, what does that mean to me? It's an awful deal. And you've got to go deal with the insurance, and you got to get another car, and it takes forever, and it stresses you out in the whole bit. That's kind of a tragedy of sorts. But let's say your wife gets cancer, and you go through the whole chemo process for 2 years and watching her puke every night and the nausea and all of the doctor visits and all of that kind of thing. And she comes out on the other side of that strong and viable and clear of that cancer after having gone through that journey. Now, let me change the order. Let's say you went through that and now you total your car. Is totaling your car anything? It's nothing. See, because once you've been through a trial, it's going to prepare you for the next. And the tougher trial you go through, the less in your life becomes a trial. In other words, my wife died. That's a fact. I went through that. Wrecking my car means nothing. Losing my job means nothing.
Right.
Why? Because I've already been through a trial that makes those things pale by comparison. And in that, there was a character and a hope of a future and a beautiful God and all of those things built, so that when I go through trials now, I have the character to say, this isn't going to overcome me. I have the hope to say, I'll get past this. It's not anything major. So my life becomes more mature and complete because I've gone through a trial. So if you never face a trial, then everything is a trial. But the bigger and bigger trials you face, the more and more things become less of a trial.
Amen.